Hey guys, welcome to Spirit Pig. This is the show that explores how to live a fulfilled life. I'm Duncan CJ, and today I'm speaking with Meik Wiking. Meik is an author, international speaker, and CEO of the Happiness Research Institute, which is an independent think tank that studies why some societies are happier than others. Their mission is to inform decision makers of the causes and effects of human happiness, make subjective well-being part of the public policy debate, and improve the quality of life for citizens all around the world. And he's also the founding member of the Latin American Network for Wellbeing and Quality of Life Policies, and has previously worked for the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Meik, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Now, I know that the idea of happiness research raises a few eyebrows, doesn't it? You know, often when you speak, you have to start by addressing those skeptical that happiness can even be studied.
Yeah, you're true. You're right, and it's interesting. I acknowledge there is the skepticism. I have also had that skepticism earlier on, but I think it's interesting that we are so skeptical towards happiness research because yes, it is subjective, but when you think of it, imagine or think of how many things we study and try to approach from a scientific point of view that are also subjective phenomena. If we talk about depression, if we talk about stress, if we talk about loneliness, anxiety, those are also subjective phenomena. At the end of the day, they're all about how we as individuals experience our lives. For some reason, there is a larger skepticism towards happiness. Maybe because it's in the positive end of the range of emotions, but it shouldn't be any more difficult to try and approach from a scientific point of view than the other ones.
Yeah, and I mentioned there in the intro, one of your missions is to help provide governments or decision makers with this research, with this of hard data about happiness and well-being to help them develop, future public policies. Are you encouraged by the speed that happiness research is making its way into public policy, or is it quite a frustrating and slow process, like 2 steps back, 1 step, 2 forward, 1 back?
No, I'm really optimistic, and I think there are a lot of really exciting things happening globally, politically, with regard to happiness and happiness research. To me, one of the biggest milestones have been the United Nations Happiness Resolution from 2011, asking all of the countries of the world to focus more on happiness and see what you can do as a country to increase quality of life. We also see cities, countries, governments, looking towards happiness as indicators of progress. You have the OECD now incorporating life satisfaction as one of the indicators of progress. Of course, famously, you have Bhutan, who have navigated from gross national happiness since the beginning of the 70s instead of gross national product. In January this year, I think it was, the UAE appointed a Minister of State for Happiness. I think 2 weeks ago, an Indian state also established a happiness ministry. So there's a lot of really, really exciting things happening. But it's of course part of a sort of slow tectonic shift of paradigms, going from the classic way of measuring progress in terms of economic terms, going over to something that is about quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, you mentioned yourself. I mean, there's so many sort of varying. There's so many different factors that affect our happiness. You got your genes, hereditary, your society. There's so many different elements, and I think nowadays, there's sort of a tendency to try and always simplify a thing, and people want quick fixes, right, to issues that maybe are more intricate and complicated. Yeah. But having said that, I'm actually going to despite pre-framing it, like when listening to a lot of stuff, that you start to notice patterns, and that coming up again and again.
Right.
Things like spending quality time with people you love, being active, doing things that are meaningful to you. If you really had to, really simplify it, I mean, are those kind of things, if we can really just focus on a few things, I mean, those things, I mean, are they really going to make a big difference if we can really do those things even more?
Yeah, but I mean, and you're spot on. It is super complicated. I like to use the analogy of health or life expectancy. That is also super complicated with a lot of factors that influence that, everything from genetics to smoking, diet, alcohol, exercise. Same thing when it comes to quality of life, life satisfaction, subjective well-being, genetics, age, where you're born, what policies, what do you do in your pastime, sense of purpose, kids, everything. So there are many factors, but you do hit on some of the key factors that explain why some people are happier than others. And one of the most consistent patterns I find, not just in the local Danish data, but the global data, is the importance of our relationships, so quality relationships with friends and family. And of course, from a scientific point of view, it is frustrating to come up with what we have known for years, something that is very trivial and banal, that friendships matter. Thank you very much, happiness research. How would we otherwise have known? But I think the encouraging or the exciting thing is that we now got data that supports it, and we have numbers and evidence in a sort of more hardcore way we can present to policymakers. And I think that sort of moves the ball more forward in terms of getting their attention to some of these areas. And I think that's what's exciting about it.
You're hoping for that Eureka moment, like, we found the secret sauce, guys, we've done it. Oh, friendship and family, damn it, no. Yay.
No, but on the other hand, it is encouraging that we are finding the evidence consistent with what you would imagine. That friendships matters, that family matters, that a sense of purpose matters, that, of course, people who are employed are more happy than people who are unemployed. People who are married are happier than single people. People who are healthy are happier than sick people. All those things we would imagine that we would find, we do find. And I think that's also a testimony to sort of the strength and the validity and the reliability of the data.
Yeah.
So I can find comfort in that.
Well, then trying to overcomplicate it, maybe we know it all along, and so it's actually just almost to recognize that.
Yeah, but I mean the exciting things are also try to follow people over time, see what kind of policies, what kind of interventions, what kind of initiatives do affect their life satisfaction and quality of life in the biggest possible way.
Yeah. And you at the Happiness Research, you do some amazing studies. You put out some incredible papers. You take sort of a spread of just society, completely different ages, different people, and then you do some of these amazing tests. Like there's a really great one recently which I just read about social media. That's fascinating. Social comparisons matter, right, don't they? And they affect how we feel.
Exactly. And it's also one of the sort of re-emerging patterns that we see in the data, that we make these social comparisons. We can see it, for example, when we look at the importance of income. We can see that people not only care about absolute income, but what we call relative income. So how much money do you make compared to your neighbor or your reference group, the people you went to school with, and so on. And we care about relative income because we care about not just our ability to consume, but our position in the social hierarchy. That is also why we can see when people become unemployed, of course, they have a higher risk of suicide, because you lose your income, you lose some of your self-esteem, your network, your sort of purpose, your identity. But what we find is, or what other studies find, is that there is a higher risk of suicide from unemployment in an area with low unemployment. Disregarded that, it would be easier to find a new job where there's low unemployment, but because you are the only unemployed around, then the social comparison effect is stronger there. So we do find this often, that social comparisons matter. So we wanted to have a look at how social media sort of affects that, because social media is this constant channel of social comparison. Yeah. So that's why we looked into that.
Right, look how good my holiday is. Look how good my breakfast is. Look how good everyone kind of puts forward, them on their best day, as opposed to what's real. So other people logging onto Facebook, it's easy to think, oh, everyone's having perfect holidays, perfect breakfast, perfect relationships, and then that makes you feel worse about yourself. Is that
Exactly. I mean, it's something we've always done. We've always cared about, signaling, positioning, self-positioning. I think Veblen, an old American Norwegian, I think it was economist or sociologist, talked about conspicuous consumptions more than 100 years ago, where we signal with our consumption what class we are in. And so we have always done it, but it's just with social media, we get this new platform, which is a very efficient way of doing it. And we are constantly bombarded with the great news of everybody we know. So we wanted to see how that affects our sort of sense of reality or our life evaluations.
Okay, and I mean, you prior to this, it was a 1 week detox. You had two groups. One, carry on as usual, carry on using Facebook as usual. Then there was another group, I think it was 500 in each one, roughly. And then the other group had a detox of no Facebook for a week. And you thought, in just a week, because there's so many different factors, and it's only a week, you're not going to see any real difference. But actually, you were surprised, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, and you're right. I mean, I didn't think we would see an effect because it's such a short time. And if our theory is correct that Facebook does change our sense of reality and does affect how we feel about our lives, well, that's something that is accumulated over time. So just 1 week, I didn't think we would see an effect. And also, as you said, so many factors influence our happiness. But yes, pretty much every indicator of quality of life satisfaction, stress, anxiety, envy, what kind of emotions we experience on an everyday basis, both positive and negative ones. We saw a positive effect from going without Facebook. Significant statistically increase in life satisfaction for one instance. The question is, we did this study December 2015, I think it was, or November. If I ask those people again who went without Facebook and had this incredibly positive experience, are you still on Facebook today? I imagine 9 out of 10 at least would say yes. So the question is, why do we, if we have this experience and we know there are some negative effects from it, why do we continue to do it? I don't know. That's another question for a different study.
So what kind of, building on that idea, like what is kind of the implication of this? Like, in light of these kind of evidence, what kind of questions do you think we as a society need to be asking? Like, what kind of questions do we need to be raising?
I think we need to start addressing what do we actually need, and in order to be happy. And I mean, there was a famous sentence that we spend money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. And I think a lot of us, including myself, are bad at judging. Why am I doing this? Do I really need it? Will it bring me increased quality of life, or am I doing it because everybody else are doing it? Do I want it because everybody else has it? And I think we have reached, for many societies, yours including mine, sort of peak level for getting happiness from stuff. Of course, there is a relationship between consumption or income and well-being at the bottom end of the scale. Being without money is, of course, a cause of unhappiness. But once we reach a certain threshold, additional income doesn't really generate marginal happiness. Yeah. And I think a lot of countries, a lot of people right now are struggling with converting wealth into well-being. And that is a code we need to crack, because otherwise we're just, exploiting resources we really don't have too many left of, to pursue some sort of happiness that we just aren't getting. So I think that's one of the key questions of our time.
Yeah. Since you started, and you've done all these studies and research, what's been one of the most surprising things you've learned? Have there been any sort of complete paradigm shifts? Has there been any moments when you just that's been really surprising, or have a lot of your theories been then actually backed up by the research and data which you found?
Both. I mean, there's a lot of confidence in what we found, because it does reflect what we think we find. Um, some of the surprising and some of the, I think, encouraging things that we have found is several things, but one of them is that I really enjoy seeing how similar we are across the globe. I think there is so much more than unites us than sets us apart, and I think that's quite encouraging, especially in times like these. That the same things that drive happiness in Asia are the same thing that drives happiness in Europe and the US. And I think that's quite encouraging. That yes, we are from the UK or Denmark or Bangladesh or the US, but we are first and foremost humans. And I think that's quite exciting, that we do see some clear patterns across cultures, across time, across generations, across countries.
Yeah. So would you say, based on that, would you say, generally speaking, are you optimistic about the future, or are you more concerned by what you see?
Both. I'm optimistic in the sense that when we look at the progress in, for example, something like the World Happiness Report, there's a lot of good things happening globally in terms of raising a lot of countries, a lot of regions when it comes to life satisfaction. The concern is that we are also in many countries seeing an increase in inequality when it comes to well-being. And I think that will be a theme that will bring even more to the table in the coming years. We've been talking about inequality for more than a century, but mainly from an economic point of view. Recently, at least in Denmark, we've been talking about inequality in health as well, but we will definitely need to address inequality also from a well-being point of view in the coming years, because that is increasing as we see it now.
Why do you do this? Why do you do what you do?
Sorry?
Why do you do this? Like, what's your driving force?
I just think it's incredibly interesting. I'm just really, really curious, and I'm just really, really fascinated with the subject. I really enjoy that the field of happiness research is, first of all, something that I think every sort of scientific discipline can contribute to. I work with economists, philosophers, sociologists, neuroscientists, political scientists, and I think everybody can contribute to this field and give some additional insight to it. Secondly, I think it's also incredibly rewarding to try to answer the simple question of why are some people happier than others, and one thing is the work, but another thing is all the things you do in your free time, conversations you have with people all over here, books you read, movies you see, suddenly gives or provides this extra dimension, because it also gives you insight to your professional field, and I think that's quite rewarding. And I think it's just incredibly interesting that we are also at a time where we do have a lot of methods, we do have a lot of knowledge within happiness research, but there's also a lot of blank or sort of dark areas on the map. So there's still a lot of things that need to be explored, and I think that's also really exciting to be part of.
Yeah. What's the biggest challenge that you kind of face then? You or us? Are there any? Yeah. What are the big roadblocks standing in our way? I'm getting deep. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I think there are several. I think there is, from a political point of view, there is still a need to create legitimacy about the field. It is growing. There is an increase in awareness and acceptance of happiness research among political stakeholders, but there's still a way to go. And I think part of that way needs to be paved by another challenge, is to have a better language to talk about these things. If we talk about the economy, we can talk about unemployment, we can talk about inflation, we can talk about growth, we can talk about GDP per capita. But if we talk about happiness, we haven't yet a good enough language, I feel at least, to talk about these things in a serious, professional, scientific manner. So we use broad terms that people interpret differently. And I think that of course, also fuels the skepticism there is about it.
So if you have that common language, then at least we've got a starting point where we can actually start the conversations. The conversations can't even start at the moment because
Yeah. So we need to develop that further. But there is a lot happening these years. Also, the OECD published a report in 2013, I think it was, on guidelines for measuring subjective well-being, where they're trying to address some of these issues about creating a sort of standard way of measuring, a standard way of talking about these.
What does a fulfilled life mean to you?
I think I'm not that different to other people on that one. I think it is, accomplishing the goals that you have for your life in terms of both, personally, family-wise, professionally, career-wise. Very much the sort of the eudaimonic dimension of happiness that Aristotle talked about. For him, the good life was the meaningful life, where we have a sense of purpose, and I think I'm agreeing with him very much on that one.
And what's one thing all our listeners can do today that will have a massive positive effect on their lives? Just one thing. But you got to throw out all your data, and you've got to give me one thing.
Could we skip the word massive positive effect? Because I don't think there is just one thing. Because so many factors influence our happiness. But that said, I mean, as mentioned, one of the most consistent patterns are the relationship. But I must also say that the more I sort of get into the evidence and the data and the research and the findings, stronger a believer I get in or become of the importance of having a sense of purpose. I think having that driving force makes life a lot easier, because having something that drives you, something that you sort of organize and structure your world around in terms of interests, in terms of pursuits, in terms of books you read, conversations you have, questions you want to answer. I think I do see that as, at least in my personal case, something that has contributed a lot to quality of life and to happiness. Then the next question is, of course, where do you buy one of those, the purpose? And and that's the difficult part, of course. For me, I was in my early 30s before I sort of discovered what I wanted to do with my life. So it's not something that, for a lot of people, I think are easily found just on day one.
Last but not least, how can people find out more about you and your work? Where can we send them?
I mean, first step would be to visit our website, the Happiness Research Institute, if they're interested in quality of life or well-being or happiness in general.
Perfect. I'm going to chuck that in the link below. Mike, thank you so much. It's been a good one, and I appreciate you. You're chatting to me today. Are you in Denmark at the moment? Are you calling from Copenhagen?
Yes. Yeah, I'm calling from Copenhagen.
I know you're on your holiday, so this is precious time, and so I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll catch up soon. Thank you.